This week's art talk is actually going to take a thematic approach based on images discussed in some of the earlier release collection by Phaidon, The Universe, Exploring the Astronomical World.
Yes, The Universe is actually a groundbreaking survey that celebrates astronomy through 300 images created by those who have tried to understand, or have at least been inspired by, the beauty and mysteries of the stars, planets, and beyond. You know, the images were carefully chosen by an international panel of experts and arranged to highlight thought-provoking contrasts and similarities. The selections include paintings, photographs, sculptures, animations, prints, sketches, digital renderings, and of course, iconic works of art.
Yeah, that's right. And the magazine Art Space recently just featured 10 modern art masters who they consider raised space art to astronomical heights. Some of our favorites that we've covered before in past art talks, like Calder, Warhol, Kandinsky, O'Keeffe, Miro, and Picasso, are all included in this. Now, while Van Gogh did not make the modern cutoff, his Starry Night, of course, why don't we just go ahead and head over to Sarah, and let's all fly to the moon and stars and beyond. Sarah, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. So yes, we are going to be doing it a little bit differently this week. So instead of highlighting one artist, we're going to look at different artists that have somehow depicted the cosmos over time. So as AJ and Jacques mentioned, our selection of art this week is from the Phaidon book called The Universe, Exploring the Astronomical World. And so this book depicts images of astronomical cave paintings from France and Spain, all the way back from 16,000 BCE to modern artists, many of which we've covered in previous art talks. So today we'll be looking at 10 images of more modern artists whose work was included in the book. So this piece is titled A Universe by American sculptor Alexander Calder, who people said used to draw in 3D. So the way this works is a motor in the base causes the two small red and white globes to glide at different speeds along the wires in a pattern that takes about 40 minutes to complete. A universe is Calder's take on the cosmos. It's abstract spheres, circles, lines, and ellipses conjure this impression of planetary motion through the solar system. And Calder's fascination with the cosmos was encouraged by contemporary advances in astronomy, particularly the discovery of the dwarf planet Pluto in 1930. And as you can see, this was done 4 years later. So this is famed pop artist Andy Warhol's Moonwalk. It celebrates the historic moon landing of July 1969, when Apollo 11 commander Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to walk on the moon. Armstrong had taken a picture of Aldrin standing on the barren lunar terrain, his own silhouette reflected on the visor of his crewmate's helmet. And this is a shot that made headlines around the world and remains one of the defining images of the era. So Warhol places Aldrin next to the American flag for added effect. And this colorful print kind of evokes a sense of this lost euphoria and glamour tinged with nostalgia. So Several Circles was painted by abstract Russian artist Vasily Kandinsky and composed as a purely abstract arrangement of various size circles. This canvas is full of suggestions of the cosmos. So you can see the atmosphere of black space. It kind of swirls with patterns of deep blue-gray if you look closely at the background. And the round forms, they kind of float like planets and overlap. And carefully executed with these delicate strokes of smooth brushwork, the circles shift in color as they overlie one another. So mint green becomes forest green, and ochre drifts over bubblegum pink, turning it to a pale dusty tone. Cherry red fades into lemon yellow, lilac purple moves into bright blue. So this piece is indicative of the cosmos, but it's also a master study of color. Twin maps of the northern and southern celestial hemispheres from a popular science book provide the background for this box, which American artist Joseph Cornell dedicated this to Giuditta Pasta, the 19th century opera star whose voice was said to evoke the beauty of the night sky. So Cornell, who's best known for his miniature box dioramas that he assembled from found materials, had a longstanding interest in astronomy. He closely followed new scientific developments, as well as studying the history of astronomy. So at the top, the white balls balance on rods and they kind of roll along the pathways, almost resembling the planets in their orbit. And the glasses at the bottom of the box might correspond to the 6 planets visible to the naked eye observers from Earth, or even the blue marble may reference Earth itself. So we've talked about American painter Georgia O'Keeffe, mostly known for her paintings of flowers and the southwestern landscape, but here she paints the night sky. And the grid of irregular white shapes is surrounded by this wash of watercolor that fades from a darker, almost near black, to a kind of a violet. And she not only captures the vastness of the night sky, but also suggested the human instinct to try to impose order and pattern on what we see when we look at the night sky, right? You think about the history of constellations and how we have all these in-depth stories in so many different cultures. We try to impose order or some sort of story to the placement of the stars in the night sky. I think this is such an interesting concept. So this is a watercolor and pencil drawing of Earth by the Hungarian-born conceptual artist Agnes Dennis. It's one of a series of similar isometric drawings she made from the late 1960s on, as she experimented with ways to translate three-dimensional objects onto a flat sheet of paper. So she depicted Earth as a pyramid, a cube, or a conch shell. And here she accurately renders Earth in a donut shape and creates a new kind of unexpected image of the planet. The North and South poles, as you can see, meet in the hole of the donut, and they kind of pull the continents in with them. So this piece is by Spanish artist Joan Miró, who dabbled with surrealism, fauvism, and cubism. Some figures in this drawing are more identifiable as constellations. So the fish just above the center of the painting kind of echoes Pisces, while the horned head at the lower left suggests Taurus. Other shapes in this piece, you've got a bird, a dancer, a man with his arms raised. They don't seem to have any basis in the night sky, but nevertheless, these various geometric shapes and irregular forms, they're kind of linked with these free-flowing lines, but they're punctuated by these simple four-line stars, as you can see throughout the piece, which place it firmly in the night sky. And it kind of resembles a mobile of black and red celestial shapes lying flat on this luminous background. The whimsical quality of the work is kind of at odds with the dark times in which it was created. It was the 15th in a series of 23 constellations painted by Miró between January 1940 and September 1941. And when he began the series, he was living in Normandy, and World War II had recently begun. And by the time he completed it, the German occupation of France had forced him to flee to Palma de Mallorca in neutral Spain. Miró later said his work took a new direction in 1939, and he began to focus on different sources of inspiration, such as the night, music, and the stars. Joseph Beuys was a German conceptual artist that helped found the art movement and community known as Fluxus in the 1960s and 70s. And this community engaged in experimental art performances, which emphasized the artistic process over the finished product. And a fun fact is that Yoko Ono was part of Fluxus. So Beuys drew what he called his astrological chart during a public lecture in Chicago in 1974. And he set out to illustrate this ideal state in which the natural and social orders are balanced. So the sun state of the title kind of blazes at the base of the composition, creating energy that radiates out in looping white lines that are supposed to represent three branches of culture: religion, art, and science. And at the center of the image, this androgynous human figure represents the earth, accompanied by a delicate stag that symbolizes humans' animalistic and spiritualist nature. Of course, we know the famous Spanish painter Pablo Picasso, and we've covered his more famous pieces in a previous art talk. These pen and ink constellations were inspired by gazing at the night sky. The sky chart is depicted in what he called his constellation drawings, 16 pages from a 1924 notebook. And while they're ostensibly abstract, small black circles of ink connected with these thin pen lines, we can still see glimmers of figurative moments amid the curving forms and irregular patterns of the four groupings. The top right almost looks like a square-headed being of sorts. The bottom right almost looks like the orbit and curvature of a planet. So there's many interpretations of what Picasso was trying to portray. And the other pieces in this series also depict similar imagery. And finally, we have this piece. We've discussed American artist Robert Rauschenberg a few months ago. If you recall, he's known for his collages that kind of blur the lines between sculpture and painting. So Space Tribute 21 depicts an astronaut floating in the zero gravity of space, beneath which the curvature of the Earth can be discerned with the wispy clouds and the blue seas. And this was part of a series that was commissioned by Felicimo, which was a Tokyo-based corporation that sought to progress social conditions. So each individual print in this series celebrated a different humanitarian achievement to promote prosperity and peace at the end of the 20th century. Using sustainable methods, the group used non-toxic printing dyes and water to transfer the images to paper, abstaining from the use of solvents in the process. So I guess you could say this was one of the first kind of eco-friendly art or green art. And artists have long contemplated and continue to explore our relationship to space. And I think as we make scientific advances and continue to advance in space, we'll also see a continued interest in the art world with the cosmos. Thank you.
Wow, Sarah, that's incredible. I'm personally very wildly inspired by space. In fact, to the extent that, I don't know if you can see that or not, but there you go.
That's the original X-33 model.
There you go. Right. And, the space has been really important to me for quite a long time. I think my favorite piece here is the moonwalk. I can remember exactly where I was when I watched that live on TV. As it happened, it's just incredible. Sarah, so which is your favorite?
So I like the Kandinsky piece with the several circles of color, but I love the concept of the O'Keeffe with how we take the stars and try to make stories about them and organize them into these different forms. I just love the concept of stargazing.
They're all of them were fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to say there's a favorite because
Right.
that model with the moving planets is brilliant.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. And maybe in the future, not too far future, given that there's a huge revitalization of space now, investments in space, maybe we'll actually have art that was created in space that we will be able to display in the future.
Yes, that'll be fun.
What do you think of that?
Yeah.
We should be training some of our artists to become astronauts.